My experience happened not so very long ago, and it happened in a small village in Suffolk, and it transpired thus. I'd come down to see a friend of mine, and we get on really well. We haven't seen each other for a little while, and gone to have some dinner, drink some wine, and hang out. And we did exactly that. We had some dinner, we drank some wine, we hung out, and we got chatting, and the night just slipped away in conversation and merriment. And before we knew it, it was getting towards bedtime. It's well into the small hours. It's about 3 a.m. probably. And we both had a bit to drink. Not ridiculously so, but enough to want to sober up a bit before bed. And this occurred, I think it was probably the kind of the start of the year, I guess, so maybe like February time, perhaps. It was cold. It was a cold and clear night. And I remember discussing it and saying, listen, perhaps what we should do is go out for a walk just around the village. It's a tiny village. Hardly anyone lives there. Deep in the Suffolk countryside. So the stars would be out and the wildlife would be there, because both my friend and I have a keen interest in the natural world. So we strode forth to alleviate any future hangovers, clear our heads, and see if we could see any wildlife around. And as soon as we stepped out of the cottage onto the village street, we were blown away by the clarity of the night. It was a beautiful, clear night, and it was cold and sharp and very, very still. It was one of those high pressure periods where the air is clear and there's not much movement, and everything is sharp and bright and crisp. And we'd not really gone more than 30 paces from a house still in the village when we heard a scuffling and a rustling in the hedge. So we'd been thinking, well, let's see if we can see some wildlife. It's at that time of the day, well, that time of the night where the creatures come out, which wouldn't be normally seen during the day. So thinking maybe a fox or a deer, or if you're lucky, a badger. And whatever was making this rustling noise sounded quite hefty. You could hear it in the hedgerow kind of scuffling around, and we were starting to sort of jokingly lay bets. I reckon it's a deer. Oh, I reckon it's a badger. You can hear it some weight. You could hear it moving. It sounded bigger than any of those things, and it was moving away from us. So this is where it varies from Darren's tale. This creature, this unknown creature, instead of following, was moving away, and you could hear it kind of walking along the street. Couldn't see anything, but you knew something was there. And we really just had no sort of thoughts of anything untoward at this point, just debating whether it was a fox or a deer or a badger. And these footsteps disappeared off into the distance. So we walked on, perhaps 50 yards to the edge of a village. It's a very small village, and came to a gap in the hedge. There was sort of a gateway, a farm gateway leading into a field. And I could see, although it was a bright night, I couldn't see everything, but I could see a shape. I could see a dark shape standing in the gateway. And I nudged my mate, and I was like, hey, it's there. Whatever it is there. It's just standing there. And we could see the silhouette of it, and we're like, that's no badger. It's not a fox. It's a deer. It's just standing. It's a deer. It's just standing there. So my friend got a phone out with a torch on. We're like, let's see, what type? Is it going to be a muntjac? It's going to be a roe deer, fallow. Shone the torch, and standing stock still in the gateway, squared up to us, not aggressive, but utterly confident, was a very large black dog. And it was strange because it was just there, four square to us. And my initial instinct was to go, who's a nice boy? Who's a good boy? And I took a step forward because I thought this is kind of weird. There's a dog just standing there at 3 a.m. in the morning, and it's a big black dog, and you're in the middle of the Suffolk countryside. So, who's a nice boy? I took one step forward, and the dog just went, and I took a step back. I was like, okay, no worries. And it was the thing which struck me was the dog. It wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't scared either. There was no hint of fear about it. It just stood there, facing us down. And it was big, and I didn't recognise. My friend sometimes walks dogs for a living, and they know that village very well. they couldn't recognise what breed it was. It was a large black dog. It probably stood at least waist height. It was big. I'm 6 foot, and it would have come up to my waist. It was stood a good. Its back was a good 3.5 feet off the ground. It probably wasn't quite the size of a deerhound. Or a Great Dane, but it wasn't far off that, and it wasn't a species or breed of dog which I could instantly recognise.
Was it shaggy?
It was relatively kind of wiry haired. It wasn't sort of mega shaggy, and it didn't have glowing red eyes, but which I was bloody glad about, because I'd have been legging it down the road. But it stopped me and my friend in our tracks. We just stood there looking at it, and I was thinking, how on earth is this going to pan out? We realised we were kind of clutching onto each other at this stage. Like going, you can see that, right? And I was like, yeah, I can see that. You can see that. Yeah, we are looking at a very large black dog here. And the dog looked at us, and I guess it felt like a long time, but it was perhaps 10, 20 seconds. And eventually what it did, it moved first, and it didn't run away. It walked out of the field, past us, and straight down the middle of a road. Not running, just walking. And my initial thought was, this dog has been walking that route for a long, long time. This dog owns this village. And we carried on our walk after.
Yeah.
It was a really unnerving thing to experience, because both my friend and I are pretty logical, pretty rational people, not prone to flights of fancy or any untoward superstitions necessarily, but that was weird. It was really odd, and we both of us were like, that was weird, wasn't it? And I watched it pad down the centre of the road, utterly confident, not looking back, not running, not hurried, not unnerved. I mean, if you find a stray dog out in the streets, it might perhaps be aggressive, and you approach it and it might growl, but then it would turn tail and slink off, or run away, or bark at you. There was no barking, there was no running away. This dog owned the place, and it knew it as well. And as a little follow-up to it, we were puzzled by that. And as I said, my friend knows the village well, and sometimes walks dogs there, and pretty much knows every dog in that village. So my friend asked around, and no one had heard anything of this dog, but also put something on a Facebook group just to ask if anyone had lost a large black dog, or anyone had seen a large black dog moving around. And the interesting thing there was that all the neighbouring villages mentioned stuff, maybe you've seen the shark, maybe you've seen this, but not a single person in the village which it was in mentioned it, not a single response. And my friend was like, it's almost as if they knew something they didn't want to let on. There really wasn't any sort of rational explanation. I mean, it was a big dog which someone had let out at night. I was just standing there. That was the conclusion we reached. It's got to be that, hasn't it? Yeah, of course it's got to be that. But I think there was just a little something in both of us which was left feeling, did we see something odd there? Yeah, and I don't claim that was black shark. I just claim to have seen a large black dog in the middle of the night. And also, if you have a dog, you might let it out at night. It's possible, so especially out in the countryside, if people are a bit aware, perhaps, that they might feel threatened by people burgling their property or intruding, perhaps they'd let a dog out. If you lived in a village and you walked around there a lot, you think and especially in a small village of only 30 or 40 houses, you would probably recognise a big black dog. You'd think there would be some sort of acknowledgement of going, oh, that's old Barry's dog down there, he always lets out at night, that's nothing to worry about.
Even if it was just a kind of, how much had you had to drink? Do you know what I mean? Somebody
exactly.
Said
all the neighbouring villages were taking the mickey like that, but none of the people in the village. So
again, it's another one, like I asked Darren, like, about going back to, if it looks like the dog, like you said, the dog looked like it knew. It walks that route many times.
Yeah.
So if you went back, could you encounter it again?
I guess it's a possibility.
Would you have to go back at that sort of time?
I guess it's a possibility, yeah. And I have asked my friend about this, and I've said, have you been walking at night again?
How long
And they
ago
have been.
was this then?
It was a couple of years.
Okay.
Not that long.
Not that long ago.
So,
and can you still picture the dog exactly as it was?
Yeah,
still
I mean,
quite sharp?
I did not so much the dog itself, but the aura, the energy the thing
Yeah.
gave off, its stance, the way. That was the thing which struck me most. It wasn't.
It was in charge.
Yeah, it was. It was. It was a confident dog, and it knew that it had the measure of us there.
Were you frightened?
When I stepped forward and it started growling, I knew to step back, but I didn't feel threatened.
Okay.
You know, I didn't. I felt like if I kept my side of the bargain, which was to possibly
Keep
observe
away.
but stay back, then it wouldn't do anything. It let me know straight away. So that moment I stepped forward, you know, shone the torch on it. It's just stood there watching. Step forward. Step back. It stops. So that dog knew exactly what it was doing and where it stood and where I stood, and I was left in no doubt as to the
Who was
pecking order
boss?
there.
Yeah.
This might sound like a bit of a weird question, and it is a weird question.
Hmm.
But did it smell at all?
I couldn't smell it. No, I didn't smell
And
it.
it was a
It's-
still night, so
It was a very still night.
Yeah.
It's true, and it's a cold still night. But I've got a notoriously bad sense of smell anyway. So no, I
I was
didn't.
just wondering if there's
Yeah,
any odour of sulphur.
no.
I knew you were going to
Yeah, no, I didn't smell anything. I will ask my friend because they might recollect differently, but no. And I have, like I say, since then I have asked them if there's been any further encounters, and they're out walking a lot in
Oh,
that
no.
area. Nothing further.